welcome to another episode of Slice and Dice. I'm Yulia, Operations Director, and I'm joined by...
Dan, the Senior SEO Specialist.
Yeah, just to get serious now. Okay, so today's episode is about how to fix a bad SEO strategy after you've been burnt down by the wrong agency. So kind of like I want to start with the first question, what are the first steps that a brand should take once they realize they have been either penalized or completely dropped down?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing to do is don't panic. If you've been penalized, it's not coming back quickly. It's going to take a couple of weeks, best case scenario, to fix it. So the thing that you shouldn't do is just immediately stop everything you're doing and then scrap your current SEO campaign. What you first need to realize or first need to identify, have you been actually penalized by Google, or has Google updated its algorithms and something that previously worked is no longer working? So one of the things we see that's usually a bit of a mistake is right away people rush into the next tactic, the next this, the next that, when sometimes it might just be that, like particularly something we saw a few years ago is when Google changes its algorithm like it did with helpful content update, stuff that used to work stopped working. Fundamentally, your site was fine. You didn't need to dig into the technical. You didn't need to dig into anything outside of the fact that your content now doesn't hit the kind of quality level that Google wants to see. So your first step is just figuring out what exactly it is that Google has now decided is wrong with your site.
And how would you do that? Like, how would you conduct a comprehensive audit to assess the damage?
Yeah, so there's a few ways that you can go about it. The main place that you need to start is Google Search Console. You first need to check actually if you've had any manual penalty notifications. If you've had one of those, that's really serious, but Google will actually explain what it is and what you've done, and if you speak to them, they can roughly explain what it is that you need to fix to get that back. Assuming it's not that, what you then need to identify is what specific pages or keywords have you lost. So the way that you do this, if you don't have access to advanced tools or an advanced agency that can diagnose this properly for you, is go inside your Search Console. You can apply like this. There's a number of them now, actually, like advanced plugins that can track the changes in keyword and page performance over a period of time. So let's say we know that most large algorithmic updates come in the 2 to 3 month window. You want to look at that 3 month look back period and just see which pages have dropped. Is there a pattern between those pages? Are they thin ChatGPT AI content? If they are, that's probably the problem. Once you know which pages have dropped and you know what keywords are associated with those page drops, go into the SERP and look at the top. Who's still at the top and why? What's the difference fundamentally between them and you?
Yeah, now, there's no need to reinvent the wheel, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Once you know that maybe your content isn't the issue, then you start looking at backlinks. And so with backlinks, when penalties come about, it's not just because you got spammy backlinks that you might have dropped. What might have happened is a particular type of backlink that previously had a lot of weight has had that weight reduced. So let's say press releases used to be pretty strong. Now they've been massively negated. They don't have the same impact that they used to have. Yeah. If you had a lot of rankings and part of the formula that allowed you to get those rankings is those press releases and they get devalued, you've done nothing wrong. Absolutely nothing wrong. Like there's nothing you need to change. It's just that backlink strategy is no longer as valuable as it used to be for you. So you need to then look at spreading out into different kind of strategies.
So you'd say the most common types of SEO damage are links and content?
Almost always across the board. I mean, depending on how you're doing your SEO, if you're aware that the SEO agency you're working with or the SEO consultant that you have in-house is doing SEO properly, you shouldn't really need to look outside of those areas. If you suspect they may have been doing things that they shouldn't have been, they're taking shortcuts, or they're doing anything untoward, you will usually be able to detect that in the links that are coming through. Check your Google latest links report in Search Console. You will see if there's loads of links that have come in quick succession, because that's you can get velocity penalties. But if you don't recognize where those backlinks are coming from, if they're not from reputable sites in your industry, if they're just spammy looking websites or very low quality websites that are linking into you, it's probably come from that. Like you've got a link velocity or spam penalty.
And how long does it take to recover from this? Like, is there a specific timeline, or does it depend on the gravity of the issue?
Yeah, so specific things that you've done have specific timelines before they recover, and that's based on the fact that certain kind of penalty windows that Google has, they refresh those penalty windows, sometimes up to 3 months, sometimes it can be a lot longer. If you've really violated the guidelines and if you've done something that maybe incited a manual penalty, these things can take a year to fix, sometimes longer. There's reports of sites recovering after like 2 to 3 years. In these kind of situations, if you can't diagnose it yourself, just get an independent auditor to come in and check, because if you don't know what it is that's causing these kind of problems and you go off trying to fix things, you might just make the situation worse. So
yeah, and there's so many parts to it. I think it's also important to kind of understand what you should address first. Is it technical issues? Is it content? Is it fixing penalties? Again, is there a specific order?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing you should look at is the manual penalties register. If you've got a manual penalty, that takes precedent over everything else, because until you fix that, nothing is going to change. After that, it then gets a little bit more granular, and it kind of comes down a little bit to intuition and experience. Like, is it the content quality on the website? You should be able to tell pretty quickly if it's that. If it's not, then you would move into something a little bit more kind of obscure, like backlinking. If you haven't made any major changes to the site, it's unlikely to be your technical SEO that's caused the problem. If you did just make a bunch of changes to your site and then you've just lost a load of traffic, it's almost certainly the technical SEO.
And it's going to be a puzzle too.
Yeah, it's going to take you a while to figure it out. I mean, in some cases, it's fairly easy to figure out what's happened. Google Search Console has another panel, which is called your indexing report. If you've suddenly seen your amount of pages that are not indexed spike up, that's your problem. Why that problem is caused, how you fix it, that's that's why you hire people like us, because you need experts to actually analyze that for you. But there are a few places, if you know where to look, where you can quickly diagnose what actually went wrong.
And circling back, because this is something that I think other clients and people could fix it themselves if they knew how. How do you identify spammy backlinks, and how can you remove them?
Yeah, so really, if you're not skilled in SEO, you have to do it visually. You just have to look at the site, and usually spammy backlinks are very obvious. You'll see your website sandwiched in between 100 other links of other random websites completely unrelated to your niche and your industry, all stacked on one page. Typically, why you get these is because link buying agencies will just outsource to another agency that just does these mass tactics that will get you loads of backlinks. And what these things will do is they will manipulate the rankings of tracking tools like Moz and Ahrefs, and it makes it look like they're doing something, but in reality they're just piling up basically a list of errors that are eventually going to get you
in
penalized.
Life and in business. Anything that is too easy is not gonna bring anything good to you. Basically, you have to struggle a bit to get performance. And you also mentioned, okay, so for backlinks, and then you have content. Say a client would have worked with another agency that created low quality content on their website. What are the steps there? Like, how can they approach this content strategy rehaul?
Yeah. So you need to first see if Google is giving any traffic to that page. If it's getting low impressions, no traffic, and it's not had traffic in months, that's negative. Like, ultimately, all of your content that's on the site should be ranking. If you have lots of pages that aren't ranking, that is now a negative ranking signal to Google. So what you need to do is you need to figure out, do you want to keep those pages or do you want to get rid of them? If you want to get rid of them, you remove them, draft them, whichever platform you're on. There's different ways of doing this. And then you 301 that link back into the most relevant page, whether that's a category page or a near a similar blog page. Yeah, so once you know which pages you need to 301, you then need to look at the pages you want to keep and figure out what's the difference between you and the people ranking in positions 1 to 3. Typically, there will be things like, is the content structured? Does it have actual, useful, unique information? One area that Google's looking for at the moment is generic, like AI output. Because everyone can do it, Google now classifies, and they say this explicitly, they classify that as the lowest possible quality of content. Therefore, everything you're trying to do on top of that is going to be massively disadvantaged. Once you know that, then you need to go into the more advanced areas where you do actually see a massive kind of return on your time investment in fixing things like your schema, your on-page schema. So this is something that is probably a bit too complex to bring into a kind of podcast format like this, but it's something where if your SEO agency is not actively doing this, you need to be looking for someone that does, because this is an area where Google has repeatedly said recently, at least in the last 2 to 3 years, that they're prioritizing sites that are putting this kind of schema in, because it's the only way they can justify and understand whether or not the site and the content on the site is written by credible people who have real authority to talk about the topics that they're talking about.
This also works very well for AEO if you also want to get surfaced in LLMs. So it goes both ways. And you did mention a lot of strategies. You've mentioned content backlinks, fixing penalties. But I'm sure clients would be very curious to understand, is there a way you can prevent losing traffic and revenue while fixing this?
Yeah, but you're not going to like the answer. Like you have to, you have to buy back that traffic through paid, and this is as kind of a harsh wake up call for how serious SEO actually is. If you do it wrong, you're going to be spending double, triple what it would have cost you to do it right to recover what you're about to lose. And sometimes these penalties last for such a long time that you're spending on very expensive PPC campaigns with much smaller return on your investment for an indefinite period of time until you can solve those problems. If you didn't do it wrong in the first place, you completely avoid that massive kind of pain for your business. And the sad thing is with this is that costs jobs. People lose their jobs over this kind of stuff quite frequently. We have 1 or 2 clients at the moment where they're actually in that situation exactly, where they used to rank super high in SEO. 90% of their inquiries came from SEO. They lost it. Now they have to cover the gap with 50, 60K in ad spend each month. And that's cost jobs. So.
Yeah, I think the most important part is at least making sure you're on a floating line and also getting the right people in to come in and fix it. And last but not least is ensuring this doesn't repeat. So do you have like a checklist for this, or?
I think ultimately with that kind of situation, if you've brought people in who can fix it, they should be able to give you a complete roadmap of how to stay out of those kind of waters again. Usually this stuff is not, like, it happens more often than it should, but it happens for pretty much the same reasons over and over and over. And they're very easy to fix once you know how to fix them. If something advanced has happened, like spammy backlinks or, a site migration that's gone wrong, those are the kind of things that you can't fix in-house. You need specialists to do. To keep your content at the right level and to stay at the right level when these new updates come about, you really only need to be speaking to a professional agency just to consult with your team if you have the kind of resources in-house to make this kind of content. If you don't, you have to outsource to the people that know what they're doing.
Outsource passionate people like you. Honestly, every podcast with you is so cool. You're so passionate about everything that you do.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was all, guys. This was today's episode. But yeah, stay tuned for the one in 2 weeks and see you soon.
Yeah,
Bye.
Bye.